So you want to own a golf course. Green fairways, members in polo shirts shaking your hand, a clubhouse with your name quietly attached to it. Sounds simple. It is not. Because what you're actually buying isn't a golf course. It's 300 acres of grass that needs to be watered every single day, whether anyone plays on it or not. You think you're buying a lifestyle business. You're actually buying a water bill with a flagstick sticking out of it. Here's the thing. Nobody explains before you sign the closing documents. Golf courses don't make money the way people assume they do. Green fees are almost a rounding error. The real economics are buried somewhere else entirely. In initiation fees, in real estate deals, in banquet halls you never think about when you picture the 18th hole. And the businesses that get this wrong don't fail slowly. They fail all at once, usually in a bankruptcy filing, usually because of one number nobody was watching. So let's walk through what actually happens when you buy a golf course. Not the brochure version, the real one. Here's where it gets interesting. Building a golf course from scratch can run anywhere from $3 million for a modest public course to over $20 million for a championship-grade private club with real drainage, real irrigation, and a clubhouse that doesn't look like an afterthought. But almost nobody builds one from scratch anymore. Most buyers step into an existing course, and that changes the math completely. You're not just buying grass in a building. You're buying decades of deferred maintenance, aging irrigation systems buried under the fairways, and, very often, existing debt that came with the property. So here's the question that actually matters. How much of that purchase price is the course itself, and how much of it is the hole you're stepping into? Because in this business, the sale price is never the real cost. The real cost shows up 18 months later when the pump station fails or the greens need to be rebuilt, and there's no line item for that in the pitch deck you were shown. Now here's the part that changes everything. Not all golf courses are the same business. They just look like it. There are municipal courses owned by cities, usually operating at a loss on purpose, subsidized because a town wants public green space. There are daily fee public courses open to anyone with a credit card, competing purely on price and convenience. And then there are private equity clubs, member-owned or developer-owned, where the golf course is almost secondary to something else entirely. An initiation fee, a waiting list, and a stamp of exclusivity. Here's the thing. Nobody explains. These aren't variations on one business. They're three different businesses wearing the same green jacket. A municipal course is a public service. A daily fee course is a thin-margin operations grind. A private club is, underneath it all, a membership sales company that happens to maintain grass. Confuse which one you're buying and you'll misprice the entire acquisition before you've even signed. So how does this actually work? Most people assume the money comes from green fees, people paying to play 18 holes. And yes, that's real revenue. But here's where it gets interesting. It's usually the smallest, thinnest slice of the pie. A public course might collect $50 to $100 a round. Multiply that by a few dozen. Rounds a day, subtract cart maintenance, staff, and the cost of keeping the turf alive, and green fees alone barely cover operating expenses, let alone debt service. You think you're buying a business that makes money every time someone hits a ball. You're actually buying a business that breaks even on the golf and survives, or doesn't, on everything happening around it. So if green fees aren't the real engine, what is? Here's the part that changes everything. The real money in golf course ownership rarely comes from golf. It comes from initiation fees, sometimes $80, $90, over $100,000 per new member at the exclusive clubs, paid up front, long before that member ever sets foot on the ninth green. It comes from banquets and weddings, clubhouses quietly functioning as event venues, sometimes generating more margin in one Saturday reception than an entire week of tee times. And for a huge share of courses built in the last 30 years, the real payday was never the course at all. It was the houses built around it. Roughly 30% of courses built in the 90s were tied directly to residential developments. The golf course wasn't the product. It was the amenity that made the houses next to it sell for more. You weren't buying a golf business. You were buying a marketing expense for a real estate project, one that, once the houses were sold, someone still had to keep alive. But here's where the fragility lives. A golf course is one of the only businesses in the world that cannot pause its costs when revenue drops. You can't lay off the grass. Turf still needs water, fertilizer, and mowing in a recession exactly the same as it did in a boom. Maintenance budgets on a full 18-hole course routinely run several $100,000 a year before a single membership check clears. Water costs alone, in drought-prone regions, can swing wildly year to year, and there's no way to negotiate with a drought. Now layer debt on top of that. Most clubs carry a mortgage on the clubhouse, the irrigation system, or a past renovation. When membership dips even slightly, revenue can fall to 60–65% of what's owed on that debt. And at that point, no lender wants to renegotiate. They want their collateral. That's the mechanism, not a dramatic collapse, a slow, quiet erosion until one bad year meets one immovable debt payment and the whole structure gives out at once. Let me show you what that actually looks like. Stockton Golf and Country Club had operated for over a century, through depressions, wars, and recessions, before it filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection to hold off foreclosure by its own lender. The bank claimed the club's collateral was worth $8.2 million. The club argued it was worth half that, $4 million. And here's the detail that exposes the entire mechanism. The bank's appraisal assumed golf course maintenance still cost around $800,000 a year, a figure that was accurate roughly 2 decades earlier. Costs had moved on. The valuation hadn't. The court sided with the club. The bank's number was thrown out entirely. 100 years of operating history, undone almost by a spreadsheet that hadn't been updated for inflation on fertilizer and payroll. That's not a failure of golf. That's a failure of assumptions. And in this industry, assumptions are the whole business. Now zoom out, because this isn't one club's story, it's the whole industry's. American golf participation peaked around 2005, near 30 million golfers. Since then, rounds played fell to their lowest level in nearly 2 decades before staging a partial recovery. Here's the twist nobody saw coming in the 80s and 90s. Developers built courses like it was a permanent boom. For a while, a new course opened in America almost every single day. Nobody was pricing in what happens when the housing market that funded them stalls. When it did, hundreds of courses closed within a few years, not because people suddenly hated golf, because the courses were never really golf businesses in the first place. They were financing vehicles for something else, and when that something else stopped working, the grass had nowhere left to hide. So here's the question that actually matters. Is a golf course a sport, or is it a real estate instrument wearing a sports clothing? Let's put real numbers on a single year for one mid-sized private club. Green fees and cart rentals, $900,000. Membership dues from 400 members, $2.2 million. Initiation fees from 40 new members that year at $85,000 each, $3.4 million. Banquet and event revenue, $600,000. Total revenue, just over $7 million. Now the costs. Course maintenance and irrigation, $1.1 million. Staff and payroll, $2.3 million. Debt service on the clubhouse renovation, $1.4 million. Utilities, insurance, and equipment, $800,000. Total expenses, $5.6 million. Net operating profit, roughly $1.4 million. And notice something. Strip out that 1 year's initiation fees, and the club barely breaks even. That number isn't stable income. It's a one-time deposit disguised as revenue, and it has to be replaced every single year just to keep the lights on. So here's the fork in the road. In the optimistic scenario, membership stays full, initiation fees keep flowing in from new members every year, the real estate around the course holds its value, and the debt gets paid down steadily. That club becomes a quiet, durable cash machine for decades. In the realistic scenario, membership softens by just 10 or 15%. New member interest slows. Initiation fees, the number that was propping up the whole model, dry up almost overnight. Revenue drops to 60, maybe 65% of what's owed on the debt. And at that point, there's no fixing it with better marketing. The lender stops being patient. The club goes up for sale, and the buyer on the other side of that table knows exactly what you now know, that they're not buying a thriving business. They're buying a distressed asset with a very expensive lawn. So, do you want to own a golf course? Here's the real answer nobody tells you at the closing table. It's not really a golf business. It's a real estate and membership business that happens to require 18 holes of grass as a cost of doing business. The golf is the stage. The membership fees, the events, the land around it. That's the actual play. Own it understanding that, and it can be one of the most quietly profitable assets a community ever built. Own it thinking you're just selling tee times, and the grass will eventually tell you the truth, one drought, one bad year, one balloon payment at a time. If this changed the way you look at that peaceful lifestyle business down the road from you, you're starting to see how these industries really work. That's exactly what this channel does. Every single week, we pull back the curtain on the Businesses everyone assumes they understand and show you the numbers underneath. So, if you want to keep seeing what's actually going on behind the scenes, subscribe now. It costs nothing, and it means you'll never look at an industry the same way again.